Hey guys, welcome to Elusive TCG, back again with another video. Limelight here. I'm here with Vazerum, who is a very strong and passionate Rai player, currently playing a lot of competitive games on the Discord. I've got him in here for a bit of an interview just to go over his list and what he's currently been working on and playing with. How are you, Vazerum?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Yep, so we are going to go through the list that you've been playing over the last few tournaments. Would you like to give us a bit of an overview?
Yeah, sure. So Rai is a mage, and he's a pretty combo-oriented deck. So everything that you're trying to do is trying to build up to these big bursty turns. And with the current format, just because I'm trying to go off quickly doesn't mean my opponents aren't trying to do that as well. So I really need to make sure that I do it quickly.
Yep,
And when I say quickly, I mean like within the first 3 or 4 turns.
as fast as possible.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yep.
the entire deck is built to just figuring out how I can get the cards I need early to stay alive, and then move the cards I don't need away from the top of the deck so that I can build into a combo and win by third or fourth turn.
Yeah, nice. So what current strengths in the current prelude meta does Rai have?
So the current strengths are that if he has the combo to go off, it's really hard to stop that damage. And even with the cards that are currently in the index that are playable on Tabletop Simulator, like Safeguard Amulet and Beastbond Boots,
Hmm.
you can play around it. So there are things that your opponent can do to try to get a leap on you. So for example, they could break the Safeguard Amulet right after you materialize before you recollect, so that you can't do anything to respond. But a lot of times, if they do that, I'll just say, okay, then I'll just use this turn to kind of establish, and hopefully I'll have some fireballs or something I could play instantly on their turn. Or I can, try to goat or bait them rather into doing it on a turn that I can't go off anyway.
Yeah, awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to start going through the deck list, I'm excited to see it, to be honest.
All right, perfect. So I'm just going to go through the material deck kind of in a linear fashion.
Hmm.
And I'll start by saying that it is a fire-oriented deck. So, of course, I'm going to play Spirit of Fire, which enables me to play fire cards. Now, I have tried to play Wind Rai to try to mitigate early damage that like
Yeah.
the rain or something can put out, but it's just not fast enough,
Yeah.
especially when you're playing the mirror match. So fire is great because you can play. First off, you have access to fireballs, which I'll show you in a moment,
Yep.
and also it gives you more card draw advantage. And since I'm just trying to go through my deck to find the pieces that I need, things like Creative Shock are just really important.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so that brings us to Rai level 1. And Rai level 1's ability says that when he comes out into play, you get 2 Enlightened counters. And Enlightened counters, at first, when I first started playing Rai, I was using them a lot to draw,
Yep.
but I realized that they're actually more powerful. Like, I think using them to draw is kind of a last resort, and they're really, really powerful when combined with a card I'll show you in a moment called Power Overwhelming,
Okay.
because that's gonna accelerate our ability to deal a lot of damage early on.
Okay, nice.
Um, yeah. So Rai level 2, I think, is probably the most important in terms of getting there as quickly as possible. And the reason for that is because Rai level 2 says whenever you play a mage spell or your first mage spell of the turn, so that includes your opponent's turns, you get an enlightened counter. So getting to Rai level 2 is very quickly is important, so that you could start building those enlightened counters off of the mage spells that you're casting.
Yeah, nice. And then you're saying you can do it on their turn as well, so you can double up your enlightened counters if you're playing something
Ex-
on your turn and their turn, right?
exactly. So
Yeah,
even if you
nice.
play like Ignite the Soul on their turn or something, you deal 1 damage, you get an enlightened counter.
Yeah, awesome.
Yep. Now Rai level 3, of course, is incredibly important because it activates your or gives you access to arcane cards, and your arcane cards are going to really be your main points of damage outside of Fireball. And Power Overwhelming is an arcane card that's going to increase the damage that your Fireball does.
Yep.
So what we're really trying to do is get to Rai level 3 as quickly as possible, but of course prioritizing level 2. And what I mean by prioritizing level 2 is if you want to get a bauble, which I'll bring out now. We have the fire bauble and the wind bauble, which basically say, if your opponent is a fire spirit or a wind spirit, you would take out the fire or wind respectively.
Yeah.
And then if you banish it, you can draw a card. Obviously, we want card advantage, so it's a great a great regalia. However, if you want to take that out early, I would prioritize getting to Rai level 2 before doing that. Okay. And again, it's because if you have cards that you want to play on your opponent's turn, or even your turn, you can get those enlightened counters quickly.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so Rai level 3, again, we want to get there as quickly as possible, but sometimes you might be playing a deck that's a little slower, so taking a bauble before going to Rai level 3 is okay.
It just depends on the matchup, pretty much.
Exactly. Yep. Another kind of staple regalia is a Crystal of Empowerment. So Rai's damage often scales off of the amount of levels that he has, and one thing that I didn't mention was that once you get to Rai level 3, your levels are increased based on the amount of arcane cards that are in your banish zone.
Okay.
So, we're trying to get cards into our arcane cards into our banish zone early, but we also want to use other cards that will scale our levels so that we can increase the damage that we do with a fireball or decrease the amount that an arcane blast is going to cost.
Got you. Okay.
All right. Other cards that I play in my material deck is a Safeguard Amulet, and this is really...
This is the one you were talking about before.
Exactly. So Safeguard Amulet, if you're playing against Rai, it's fantastic. So it's really useful in the mirror because when you banish it, says whenever your champion would take non-attack damage this turn, prevent 4 of that damage. So it's not just one source of damage, it's every source of damage for that turn, you're preventing 4 of it.
Wow, that's crazy. Every spell you play that turn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are also cards, I forget what it's called, you probably know it more than I would, with Lorraine. It's like Blazing Throw or something like that.
Yes. So it gets rid of a weapon and deals 4 non-attack damage straight to something.
Exactly. So obviously 4 damage off of one card is really good, especially if it's coming in for the kill turn. So if you have a Safeguard Amulet out as Rai, you could actually prevent it. Now, it's going to be rare that you actually have a Safeguard Amulet out against Fire Lorraine because the games usually happen pretty quickly unless they have a couple of off turns, but it is a possibility. Orb of Regret, I play because a lot of times you just need to fix your hand. So you might have some we'll call them normal cards or really good early game fire cards in your hand that are great in the first 2 turns. But then if you want to start getting to Rai level 3 and utilizing your arcane cards or getting to those combo pieces that you need or win conditions, Orb of Regret will allow you to take 3 of the cards that are in your hand, shuffle them into your deck, and then draw 3 new cards. Tome of Knowledge. Sorry, go ahead.
Orb of Regret's pretty much the mulligan of the game because you don't get to mulligan at the start of the game. So
exactly. Yep. And also they have new art that they just revealed for this that looks absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Tome of Knowledge, it costs 1, so I'm probably not going to get it right away. When I say 1, I mean it's the memory cost. So unless I have some sort of floating memory in my graveyard, or I'm just I have plenty of cards to spare in my memory, then I'll get it. But it's really good because 1, it adds a level to your champion, and if you really need to, you can banish it to draw a card. So I used to always grab this very early, but this is actually usually a very late game play for me now. Chalice of Blood, I don't get to play it too often because if I'm over 20 damage, I'm probably going to lose the game. But if they get me to 20 damage or 21 and I get to go again, then Chalice of Blood allows me to draw 2 cards when I banish it. So obviously if we're trying to get deeper into the deck to combo off or just find the missing pieces that we need, Chalice of Blood's going to be really great in helping us do that.
Nice.
And then the last card is Arcanist Prism. So this is probably the rarest card that I play, but when I do play it, it's a game-winning card.
Yeah, this card's crazy.
Yeah. So what I had a hard time understanding at first was how it was played until someone actually showed me sequentially. So the way that this card works is, let's say you have 4 cards in your memory, right? Your recollection phase begins, and the first thing that happens is Arcanist Prism activates. So you would take the cards in your memory, put them on the bottom of your deck, and draw 4 cards. Now, why is that important? Because you play cards in your deck that have fast speed. So if you play cards while still in your recollection phase at fast speed and put cards into your memory in order to pay the cost for them, you at the end of your recollection phase, you pick those cards back up from your memory. So
it's like a free turn or free throw of spells.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you're playing something, obviously your cards are leaving your hand, but whatever's going into your memory gets picked back up. So, if you have things like Arcane Sight or Power Overwhelming or even a Fireball, you can play all of them at fast speed, dumping cards into your memory, and then pick them back up and play them again. Yeah, or playing whatever you picked up again. Yeah. So that covers the material deck. Do you have any questions here?
I think that it's pretty awesome, the mix of cards. I mean, you've got a pretty consistent amount. This is a card that I'm interested in, but I can see that when it is used, it can save a game. That's for sure. But no questions really. Pretty straightforward. I like this card. Very crazy card. I'm guessing when you get this out, things can go pretty wild with the Arcanist Prism. But yeah.
Yep, absolutely. There have definitely been games where I did not think I was going to win based on what I had. So I had a floating memory in my graveyard, pulled out the Prism, and all of a sudden I get 2 Arcane Blasts and Fireball.
That's crazy.
It's like, oh, okay, there we go. All right.
Would there be anything that you've thought of changing recently out of any of this stuff?
So not recently. I've actually changed to this recently. So okay. I've played with other things. Like I've played a Sword of Seeking. I've played the Scepter. I've even tried the I think it's the Flute, where you can like exhaust it to get a level.
Yep.
And I just think for what I'm trying to do in this particular deck list, I'm just trying to draw as many cards as I can and go off as early as possible.
Yep.
And actually I think that brings up an important point. So I've played a lot of variations over the last couple of months of Rai, and it was always trying to react to what I thought the meta would be, or what my perception of the meta is. And I realized that it really didn't matter, because whatever the meta is, I could try to react to it, but I'm still probably going to lose before I'm able to do what I want to do, because I'm spending so many resources reacting to my opponent.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? Let's just forget the meta and just try to do what I want to do as quickly as possible. And I've definitely been winning more consistently. I wouldn't say that, every game is a shoo-in. I think it still has a pretty tough matchup into Fire Lorraine especially, but definitely better.
Yeah, nice.
And it's better able to take advantage of when Fire Lorraine has off turns.
Yep.
So
awesome.
Cool. So yeah, so if you want, I can go into the main deck now.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good.
All right. So I'll just pull this over here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So as I said, the thing that we're trying to do is go off, and what does that look like? Well, it really looks like just playing as many Arcane Blasts, which I play 4 of.
Oh wow.
Or Fireballs, which I also play 4 of, as possible.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, so Arcane Blast deals 11 damage, and it costs 11, but it has efficiency, which means the cost is reduced based on your level.
Wow, so this can be for free, technically.
Exactly. So, if we have a bunch of arcane cards in our Banish Zone, we're level 3, maybe we have a Tome of Knowledge out, we've played Arcane Sight, we pop Crystal Overwhelming, Crystal of Empowerment. It's pretty quick it's pretty interesting how quickly you can get to level 11, at least for a single turn.
Yeah.
And then the Fireballs, they just scale with the amount of levels that you have. So it deals 1 plus your level. So if you have level 11 and you have an Arcane Blast and a Fireball in your hand, you can deal 11 damage for free off the Arcane Blast.
Yeah.
And then you could deal 12 damage off the Fireball in a single turn. And that only requires 4 cards, including the Fireball and the Arcane Blast.
I'm pretty sure there was a leak on Discord for everyone yesterday. There was a Regalia called Channeling Stone, which made the next spell cost 2 less. Would that make this Fireball free?
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds deadly.
Absolutely.
Must be excited for that card then.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to figure out how to do it as quickly as possible. Yeah. So, and so if you think about it, right, it really is 2 cards. So it itself, what was it? It was called
Channeling Stone, I'm pretty sure.
Channeling Stone, yeah. And it's a Regalia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you pop that reduces the amount of cards that you need in order to deal the damage by 2 in your hand. And that could potentially be an entire turn faster that you're winning.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So in order to do this, we have to do 2 things. Well, 3 things, really. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to survive, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so mages as an archetype, they're typically squishier, and they do have less health. I think Rai level 3 has 25 health, while Lorraine has 28. I'm not sure how much Sylvie has. So, we want to stay alive. So how do we do that? We play, Library Witch.
This card is very
good. Yeah, it's fantastic. And
Mm-hmm.
every card in here serves multiple functions. So I'm trying to find the cards that provide the most amount of value. And what I mean by they serve 2 functions, I need cards to either accelerate my win condition or replace itself, or do both at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So Library Witch, they could ignore Library Witch, right? But eventually they're going to want to attack my champion, and because she has intercept, I'll be able to block. So not only am I having her soak damage, which could potentially buy me an entire turn, but it's also replacing itself because when she's put to the graveyard, I get to draw.
Yep, got you.
Yep. So the next card, which I think is the one card that fills the slots where it's like I've tried a lot of different things, but I've kind of just landed here and I'm pretty comfortable with it. But if there's something else, I'd be open to it, is Magus Disciple. So Magus Disciple will replace herself, because when she dies as a class, as long as you're a mage, right? So you can't just play this as a fire spirit and then have them kill Magus Disciple. You won't draw cards. So you always want to make sure that you're at least Rai level 1.
Yeah.
But she'll replace herself, and she gets +1 level, or gives your champion +1 level while she's out. Now, the reason that's important is because your opponent might ignore her for the first couple of turns, right? Like, oh, it's just 1 damage. It's not that big of a deal. But very often, I've needed that extra 1 or 2 damage that Magus Disciple provides when I'm doing, 25 damage in a turn.
Yeah.
So that's that. And if they ignore her, I'm dealing this incremental damage that could be game winning. And if they don't, again, she's soaking the damage and I'm replacing her by drawing off of it.
Yeah, nice. Once again, it's like a win-win, two options for it.
Exactly. Oh, and the other thing, the reason why I'm playing her is because I'm playing I think I'm playing 20 arcane cards, which I think is a lot, right? So if your hand gets clogged early on with arcane cards, it becomes difficult to actually get cards into your memory and play things when, you have to wait until level 3 to play the arcane cards. So Magus Disciple costing 2 is a great, second turn card to play.
Okay.
Or third turn card to play.
Yeah, nice.
All right. So that really, those are the cards that mainly soak the damage, right? But there are other cards that present a decision to your opponent to make, right?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that, I mean I play 4 Flame Swordsman.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of reasons I play him. One, again, it's a card I could play early game. 2, as long as I'm a mage, he has floating memory. So if he's in my graveyard, I could use him to, bring out a Regalia or level up to Rai level 2 or 3.
Yep.
And that's really important because then I'm able to keep more cards in my hand, which will allow me to combo more efficiently later on.
Yep.
And he's dealing that incremental damage. Or if they want to get rid of that incremental damage, they're going to attack him instead of me and potentially buy me a full turn.
I have noticed currently in Grand Archive there's like a sweet spot with 2 damage. If there's like 2 damage floating memory, for example, one of my favorite cards, the Veteran Knight, which is a 2/3 floating memory for 5, it puts them in that awkward situation where the 2 damage is gonna come up very quickly, but you don't want to give them the floating memory. So you're kind of same with this. You're kind of stuck in: do you kill it and waste your time and they get something for it, or do you leave it and potentially lose too much health?
Yeah.
So,
exactly. Exactly. So, Flame Swordsman, just all around really great card. I wasn't playing it in the first, I played it, then I wasn't playing it, and then I just discovered that, in my opinion, he's just a must have. And the other reason too is because he scales well, or he pairs well rather, with the 4 creative shocks that I'm playing. And a lot of people claim that this is one of the best cards in the game. I don't necessarily disagree. But I might think
I think in Mage it's even better. But I think Fire Lorraines are running this as well, right?
Yeah, so it's funny because I think most people would say that, and as a Rai player, I actually think it's even better in Fire Lorraine. The only reason is because with Fire Lorraine, if you have a fire card that you could discard 2 creative shock, you're getting 2 fire cards into your graveyard off of 1.
Yep.
Which is gas for what's that one
Rending
card?
Flame,
it's like
Fire Momentum,
Rending Flame. Yep, exactly. Which doubles all of Lorraine's damage for that attack.
Yep.
So, but I agree. It's also extremely good in Rai because, one, it helps us dig through the deck. So essentially, what Creative Shock says is you draw 2 cards and discard a card. But as you were saying, if you're a mage, you get to deal 2 damage to a unit if you discard a fire card to its effect, right?
Yep.
So it helps you clear the board if you need to, or you could just get 2 damage in, or maybe you're playing against another Rai who's not playing any allies and you have a Library Witch out, so you could kill your own Library Witch to draw another card, right? So there's a lot of different things you could do.
Yep.
And it just helps get the floating memory into your graveyard. If you have like a Flame Rune Swordsman just sitting in your hand, you don't really need to play it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think I did see in the tournament the other day there was a Lorraine that was doing the big cleave draw, and the Rai player did Creative Shock on the Lorraine's turn to kill Library Witch, and it's just so much value to do that. So,
yep. I love that. And then you could also play the 4 Ignite the Souls mainly for fuel for the Creative Shock.
Yeah.
Although they do have value, right? Sometimes I'll use Flame Swordsman to attack like a 2/3 ally and just need that one last damage to get it off the board. And then the Ignite the Soul also has the floating memory as a class bonus, so it'll help you level up when you need to faster.
Yeah, this card's also great for cards like Blitz Mage that come out with like 3 damage, 1 health. It's very punishing to have it Ignite the Soul for 1 damage.
Yep, exactly. So in terms of floating memory, I'm also playing a normal card called Idle Thoughts. I'll put it over here. So I'm playing 3 Idle Thoughts. I think 4 is a little too much, only because Idle Thoughts, what it does is it lets you rearrange the top 4 cards of your deck, right? But it doesn't let you put them on the bottom. That's Glimpse.
Yep.
So because of that, I think 4 is a little too much, but 3 is a good sweet spot. It's also floating memory. It's a great first turn play, right? So if you want to just put 1 arcane card in your memory on your first turn, play the Idle Thoughts, rearrange the next 4 cards, and then you could banish the arcane card, get Rai level 1, and now you're starting to build level counters for level 3.
And this doesn't have class bonus, so technically anyone can run this Idle Thoughts.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And I'm a sucker for like quills and scrolls and stuff, so I also love the artwork.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's all the floating memory that I'm using. So I think that's a good amount though. 11 floating memory.
Yep.
And again, it's really, hey, I even though Idle Thoughts doesn't replace itself, Ignite the Soul doesn't replace itself, because they're floating memory, they kind of do, where I'm not using a card from my memory zone in order to banish and materialize something.
Do you ever feel as though you're in the end game and you've got too much floating memory that you didn't take advantage of in your graveyard?
That's actually pretty rare,
Okay.
believe it or not.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it's only because it's a 60 card deck.
Gotcha.
So even though I'm playing 11, right? It only represents I don't know, what is that? 20%, maybe less than 20% of my deck.
Yeah.
So it doesn't usually happen, but if it does, then and I have the ability to actually materialize something, then I'll use it for like Arcanus Prism or something like that, so that I get to keep the memory in the memory zone, so that I get more cards off the Prism.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Yeah, but good question. So on the topic of Idle Thoughts, there's also Scry the Skies. So Scry the Skies costs 1, and it has Glimpse based on your level. I'm usually going to not play this, so I'm playing 4 of these, and I'm just kind of piling these here to make room for the other cards. But I usually try to save this for later in the game, because you get more value out of it based on how many levels you are. Right. So, if I'm playing Rai and I have, something that draws cards in my hand, I have Scry the Skies, then I get to, if I'm level 8, I get to look at the top 8 cards in my deck.
Jeez.
And yeah, that allows me to really set up at least my current turn, and potentially my next 1 to 2 turns after that.
That's very scary, looking at top 8 of your deck. You should be able to set up some pretty strong stuff, right?
Exactly. And it also has Glimpse, so there's a lot of times where I just don't want any of those cards, and I'm putting them all in the bottom, right? Really, really powerful, and it replaces itself, because it puts the top card of the deck after you Glimpse. You then put the top card of your deck into your memory. So it fits that theme.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so that really covers like the digging and stuff like that, without going too far into the arcane cards. So I'm just going to finish up the normal cards real quick.
Yeah, nice.
So one of my favorite cards, that it's more of a recently favorite card, because I didn't realize how much utility you can have with it, even like mid-game, right? So let's say the game's going a little longer, you're not quite level 3 yet, or your champion's not, the 3rd level yet. You could still dump, 6 of your cards in your hand, if you don't really have anything, to play a Careful Study for 6 Enlightened counters. Or if you're Rai level 8, you can play it for free, and that's going to be a lot of gas for like a Power Overwhelming, or just digging through your deck for what you need. Because what Careful Study does is, as long as you're Rai level 2 and you play it, you'll get an Enlightened counter based on Rai level 2's effect. And then you get the 5 Enlightened counters from Careful Study. So essentially, if you're level 8, it's free because it's efficiency, and you're getting 6 Enlightened counters, which equals 2 cards. So
draw 2,
so you're basically getting 1 extra card for free, right? Because you're playing this, drawing 2.
Do you ever feel as though with 4 of these in your deck, you're getting stuck with them early, or not really?
No, I was worried about it, but I've never wished I didn't have it. A card that I did feel was clunky at certain times was Peer into Mana. Okay. I was playing both of them, but I got rid of the Peers into Mana. I do still like the card. I think it could have a place. So Peer into Mana, it costs 4, and I think you get 2 plus your level.
Enlightened counters,
Enlightened counters, right? Something like that. Yeah. So late game, it could be great, but it still costs a lot to play. So you're not getting a ton of value late game. It's kind of like a Hail Mary at that point. It is a really good card to play at Rai level 2, because even at Rai level 2, if you're only level 2, you're getting 5 counters off of it, because it gets a counter off Rai's ability as well.
Yeah.
But again, you're paying 4, so it kind of goes against what I'm trying to do in the deck, which is accelerate. It's more of a setup card rather than an acceleration.
Yeah, with this level 8 plus, you're just drawing and drawing if you have them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you combine it with like a Scry the Skies, you Scry the Skies, you see everything that you're going to get. You put something on top, then that goes into your memory. You careful studies after that. Maybe you have the 3 enlightened counters you draw, and then you play a careful studies, knowing that there's the other 2 cards on top that you need to play, right? So it's just a way to dig. Okay, so the last normal cards that I have are Dungeon Guides, and they're one of the most important cards in the deck because what Dungeon Guide lets you do is really 2 things, right? So if the game's if you don't have to win on turn 4, then what you could potentially do is play like a Crystal of Empowerment or materialize a Crystal of Empowerment when you're Rai level 2, and then on the same turn play Dungeon Guide, which allows you to banish 2 cards from your memory and then go up another level, right? So even though I've materialized for the turn, I get to materialize again off of Dungeon Guide.
This card's crazy.
Yeah, or if you're like, I need to just race as quickly as possible, you go to Rai level 2, play a Dungeon Guide, now you're Rai level 3.
Wow.
Yeah, and it works really well, especially if you've gotten a lot of those arcane cards early, because you could potentially be, level 8 to 10 by turn 3 or 4 using Dungeon Guide.
Yeah, okay. Awesome.
Yeah. So, and I always struggle with whether I want to put a 4th copy of the card in here just because of how important she is. But your question about careful study is definitely relevant to Dungeon Guide. Like if I have 2 in my hand, like one's just completely useless.
Yeah, you don't want to get caught with them, especially when you're trying to find your good stuff, right?
Right. Like I don't mind having 2 careful studies in my hand, especially if I could get to level 8. But if I have 2 Dungeon Guides, it's not really relevant.
Yeah.
And that's probably a situation where I'm going to get an Orb of Regret or try to use Arcanist Prism.
Got you. Yeah.
Yep. And then before going to the last arcane cards, I'm going to talk about the last fire card, which is Sparkleite. Sparkleite is an infuriating card and an amazing card for a Rai player.
Yeah.
The reason why it's an infuriating, and it's for the same reasons, by the way. So it's a fantastic card because if you're playing against Rai and they spell shield, which I'll bring out in a moment, you can play Sparkleite at fast speed. Well, you let the spell shield resolve. You know what? Let me just pull out spell shield.
Yeah.
So spell shield as Rai costs 2, and the next time damage would be dealt to your champion this turn, prevent that damage and put that amount of enlightened counters on your champion, and you could do it at fast speed.
Oh wow!
Right. So if a Rai player attacks you for a 14 damage fireball, you can spell shield it, prevent all the damage, and get 14 enlightened counters.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but you can remove 3 enlightened counters at fast speed at any amount of times each turn and draw a card.
Oh, so you can just draw them all on his turn if you want to.
Exactly.
Wow.
So what Sparkleite does is if I'm playing against a Rai in the mirror and they spell shield, right? Then after the spell shield resolves, I could play Sparkleite before my other attack resolves. And now, because Sparkleite is unpreventable, the spell shield sees it as its target, but it's not a legal target, so the spell shield fizzles.
Oh wow!
And I'm still dealing the damage off of Sparkleite.
I did not know that works like that.
Yeah. So it's pretty amazing, and the reason why it's infuriating, the Sparkleite's infuriating as a Rai player, is because if you're playing against Fire Lorraine they come at you with their what is it, Rending Flames again, right?
Yeah.
For 12 damage. And you spell shield, they can also play Sparkleite after your spell shield resolves.
Oh, it's not class bonus either.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that's a class bonus is the extra damage.
Wow, that is a good card too.
Yeah. So really, really good. I think four is four might not be necessary, but it's just so important to have in the mirror that I play four. And also, I've learned that I used to hold my combo pieces way too much. So I think I was playing a game just the other night where I used two fireballs to get rid of an ally
Oh
because
wow.
I learned like, hey, I need to survive rather than because it doesn't matter if I have these fireballs if I'm not alive when I'm level 3,
Yeah, true.
right?
Very true.
By the time I get to level 3, so I might as well use two fireballs to get rid of the ally, and that actually bought me one turn to combo off and win.
Wow.
So having four Sparkleites allows me to get rid of allies without having to ditch the fireballs.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. So the spell shield we talked about. I'm playing 4 copies of these just because they're just amazing. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what type, as long as it's not unpreventable damage, you
Emergency
could
button.
prevent it and
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's also a card where if I see it very early, I don't mind putting it into my memory to then banish and materialize, something else.
Yeah. Nice.
So what gas do we have? We
Yeah. The
have
gas. Where's the gas? Hit me
yeah.
up.
So we have Arcane Disposition, which we play 4 of.
This card is
So
crazy. I've heard.
yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's not overpowered, right? And it's not overpowered because it costs 3, which is a lot. So you're paying 3, um, playing it, right? And
My
then you're
gosh.
getting 3 cards. So even though you're keeping the cards in your memory, so you're not necessarily, getting rid of those original 3,
My God.
you're trading 4 cards for 3 on that turn. But the reason why that's important is because let's say you scry the skies or you just need to dig into one fireball or one arcane blast to win.
Yep.
Arcane Disposition helps you get there. Or if it's a slow game, it's actually even better because then you could play it, get all those new cards, hopefully play those cards, because if you don't, you have to discard your hand at the end of turn, right? That's the balancing feature
And like force
of the
card
card.
advantage.
Yeah, then you're all of a sudden you have all these cards in your memory, so next turn you're pretty sure to go off.
Yeah. Nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
I
And
have
of
seen
course,
someone play like multiple of these on a turn and then have like 8 to 10 cards the next turn, which is pretty strong.
yep. Yeah, and a lot of people also like to combine that with another card called Reckless Conversion, which allows you to I forgot exactly what it does, but it puts cards back into your
It puts all your
your
memory back into your hand, right?
yeah, but it costs a lot to do it. Like you have to either banish or put cards back into your deck
Yeah.
to do. And while it's definitely a good card, I think it'll
My
be more of
gosh.
a great card in like a control oriented Rai, because it's going to be very, very like
My God.
situational for it to actually do what we want it to in this
Yeah.
deck.
Yeah. Got it.
The other gas is Arcane Sight, which is just so much value because it's fast speed. So I'm playing 4 of them. It's fast speed. You gain a level and you draw a card. That's it.
Yeah.
So
For free.
it replaces itself, and you're getting a level, which is potentially more damage and potentially being able to see more cards off of like a Scry of the Skies.
That's a cool art.
Yeah, definitely like it. And then the last cards are Power Overwhelming. And I was not playing this for such a long time. I did not see the value in playing it, but it's so good. So again, when I was thinking about how can I make this deck more consistent, what exactly am I trying to do? And when I started to ignore what my opponents wanted to do and just started focusing on what I wanted to do, Power Overwhelming is kind of the key to all of this. And the reason for that is because it allows me to convert enlightened counters into levels for the rest of the turn.
Jeez.
And it costs 0. So if I play 1 or 2 careful studies and I have all these enlightened counters, and then I play Power Overwhelming and convert them into levels, that translates into free arcane blasts and more powerful fireballs.
So technically speaking, on a Fire Lorraine's turn, you can spell shield the Rending Flames, gain 12 enlightened tokens, Power Overwhelming make 12 levels and then fireball them for 13 if you have enough.
Absolutely.
That's crazy on their
And
turns.
that's only off of the levels you gained,
Yeah,
right?
wow.
So if you're already level 8, right, and you gain the 12
You're level
levels
20.
off of that, you're level 20, you're dealing 21 damage. In fact,
Jeez.
I'm pretty sure the most damage I've dealt in a single turn is either 49 or 51. One of those
Wow.
numbers. Yeah.
That's crazy to think
Um,
about. And that's all for like 5. You're paying 5 memory to do all of that.
yeah. So I did have a lot of cards in my hand, and I think I played 3 fireballs. But it was pretty epic and felt
Wow.
really good. And I will say the last damage was the dungeon guide. I had a dungeon guide out that just
Oh
swung for
wow,
1.
that's funny.
Yeah. So that's the main deck, and all I'm trying to do is get enlightened counters, stay alive, and blast them as quickly as possible.
Would you say, just for the people who want to get involved and try this deck, what would be some, I guess, starter tips or some things that they should look out to do early to survive?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think remember what the main goal of the deck is, right? And kind of use that as a fundamental principle. So when you're trying to make a decision of what you want to do, ask yourself, is this going to get me to the cards that I need faster? And is this going to accelerate the amount of damage that I could deal? And if the answers are yes to those, and it's, I guess the third question is, and this is also, is this going to help me stay alive longer, right? So like that example I used before, don't be afraid to, fireball an ally for 3 when you're level 2. If you think that 2 damage could potentially be cumulative over the course of 3 turns, right? That could be 6 damage, which could be game winning.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just about
And
kind
that
of, you can give up some of that because in the end you'll have more than enough damage if you can get there.
Yeah, and I would say, prioritizing information is really important. So cards like Scry the Skies, you don't. I mentioned before that I like to wait as long as I can for Scry the Skies. That doesn't mean that I'm only playing it at level 3.
Yep.
If I have to play it at level 1, that's fine. Especially if I'm like, I need a Library Witch in order to buy myself a turn, or I need to dig through my deck a little faster. Then I might utilize those cards faster than I normally would.
Yeah, awesome. Okay.
And I do have a side deck. I'm still up in the air about it. Is it okay if I get rid of these and show the side deck?
Go for it.
Okay. So the side deck is really just 8 cards.
Okay.
And the first card is Focus Flames. And the reason I'm playing Focus Flames is because that situation I talked about before where I fireballed twice because I wanted to get rid of an ally.
Yep.
I'd much rather just play a Focus Flames.
Of course, yeah.
Right. And also, if it's in my hand, I don't really need it. I could discard it to Creative Shock and deal 2 damage to the champion.
Yeah, awesome.
Then the other one is Spurn to Ash.
Spurn to Ash.
Now, this was a card that I played in the main deck earlier, but then I'm like, I think I could actually play around things that I'm really worried about. But if you're playing against like a Sylvie with Beast Bomb Boots, Spurn to Ash gets rid of the Beast Bomb Boots. So,
and people aren't really running Regalia Destroy currently, so people are feeling very safe and leaning on their Regalia at the moment.
Exactly, and even if you don't want to get rid of the Regalia, again, you could discard it to Creative Shock and deal 2. So the fact that these are fire cards just provides that much more value.
Yeah, awesome. Is there anything else you've been thinking of putting into the sideboard so far, or not yet?
Yeah, so I'm always going back and forth with this. Purge and Flames, I really like. It deals 3 damage to all units other than your champion. But I find anytime I want to actually play it, it's usually against a win deck, and they always have favorable wins in their hand, and all their allies have 3 health. So like, I'm just wasting a card at that point.
Yeah.
So I'd rather use cards to accelerate my combo rather than try to, like, if I'm at a point where I have to wipe their board, I'm probably not going to win the game.
Yeah. Behind.
Yeah. Yeah, disintegrate is a possibility instead, because disintegrate, it has efficiency. It costs a lot, but it has efficiency, and it gets. I think it gets rid of a regalia or an ally. So
Yeah.
I like the idea that it opens that up. But I I don't know. I don't know. I think I would rather disrupt them earlier than worry about getting to a certain level to play the disintegrate for the regalia. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. I have to test them more.
Yeah, fair enough. And so, you have an actual video on your YouTube channel of you playing this, right? That came out a couple days ago.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. I
awesome.
have and there's actually two versions of the deck. One where I was trying a couple things and then I kind of settled on this, and it was against Fire Lorraine.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll put that for the guys who want to watch that. I'll put that in the description.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
but yeah, thanks for going through this. This has been a really really good deck tech and a lot of information for people who want to get involved and play it.
I appreciate that. And, if anybody has any questions, feel free to comment below, and I'll keep an eye on the video and try to respond as much as I can.
Yep, and if you guys want to check out Vazerum, he does have a YouTube channel called Vazerum Presents. I will be putting that in the description as well. And yeah, make sure you go chuck him a follow and like and get more involved with Grand Archive. Thank you so much for that, Vazerum. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Cheers.